Alright, so in this video I'm going to cover SUMIFS, AVERAGEIFS, and COUNTIFS functions. You use these functions when you're trying to do conditional summing, conditional counting, or conditional averaging. So what that means is basically our regular function sum. So if we do equal sum and we just give it a range, close parentheses, hit enter, that will give us the total for this column. Now what if we only wanted the total with a condition? So maybe we want a Nike brand. So to do something like this you would use SUMIFS function. Zoom in a little bit here. Think this is enough? Let's try to do that. Let's try to do basically just sum up only Nike from the list. So what we do, we use SUMIFS function. So by the way, there is also a function SUMIF, which I'm not going to use in this particular video, just SUMIFS. So SUMIFS is the function. The first argument in this function is SUMRange. So SUMRange is again the range of numbers we would like to sum up, which would be all of these values in here in this column. Oops, let me correct this. Select the right range. So SUMIFS in the range we're trying to sum up comma after that. And then we do criteria range. So the criteria range is the range in which we're going to do our selection, which in this case is brand. So I'm going to select this range. It has to be matching the other range in size. So if I went from D12 to D22 to D12 in this range, I have to go from C2 to C12, the same size in that range. And finally in this criteria range that I selected, I have to select what's the criteria. So I want to make sure it's Nike, right? So I can go ahead and type Nike. I cannot just type Nike like this because I have to tell my Google Sheets function that this is text. So I type it in quotes, close parentheses, hit enter. And that should be my total for Nike, which is basically this, and this number added together. So that's our SUMIFS with a basic single condition. Now you could do SUMIFS with multiple conditions. That's the whole point of SUMIFS function. So this is just a single condition. I'm checking in this range of brands for Nike brand. Now what I could do a comma. And then it gives me another criteria range option. So in addition to checking if this is Nike or not, maybe I want to also check that it's in a particular date range. So I'll go ahead and highlight this column of dates and comma. And then I will have to provide the criteria. Let's say I only want everything after 2/13/2017. So I can do that by saying that the criteria for this range that I selected, which is dates, is I want it to be greater than 2/13, right, 2017. Close parentheses, hit enter. So now I'm getting to 21 because if we look at it, we have 3 Nikes. But this one is not after 2/13/2017. Because I said greater than that date. Now I could say greater than or equal to, which should also include that date in it as well. Right. So this is how you can filter to date range. So see, the criteria goes in quotes. And I'm selecting that this is within this range. And you can continue this by adding more criteria. So I can go here into comma and select yet another range and filter to certain numbers. So for example, I could say let's take all this cost of goods numbers. And let's take only those where cost of goods is above 100. So again, this all goes in quotes like this, greater than 100. Hit enter. That should filter to everything that's cost of goods is above 100. It's Nike and the date is greater or equal to 2/13/2017. If we just do greater than, then we get 144. So basically the only one this one is cost of goods is not matching the criteria. This will be C matching the criteria cost of goods. And since we're summing sales, we're going to get this number on the left. That's our SUMIFS function. Now AVERAGEIFS works exactly the same way as SUMIFS. Now in this case, I want to sum up sales based on all this criteria that I outlined on the right. Now if I wanted to get the average of those, instead of saying SUMIFS, I would say AVERAGEIFS, so average. Ifs and the rest stays exactly the same. I hit enter and that should give me the average. Since I have only one number, the average of that will be the same. Let's try to expand this criteria range a little bit. So we have more options. Now at least there should be 2. So now we get the average of 2 numbers that match the criteria. So basically, if you can build SUMIFS function, just take the SUMIFS part and change it to AVERAGEIFS. You have the average with the same criteria. Now most of the time when you do this, it's probably not a good idea to hardcode all this criteria is in your actual formula. So what you might want to do, you might want to just have some sales. So this says Nike, maybe this cell will say greater or equal to that. And finally this cell will say greater than 100. So now I'll go back to my formula and replace this set of saying Nike. I'll replace it with cell reference instead of saying this. I'm going to delete that and replace it with this reference to the date and then the reference to this criteria. So I hit enter, should still get the same thing. Now only I'm just kind of referring to this. So if we want to do this for, let's say, New Balance instead, we can just replace this with New Balance. Apparently we get a 0. There's nothing for New Balance matching our criteria here. We can go here and change our criteria and hopefully at some point we'll get something in our total. So that's our SUMIFS. Sometimes when you do this, you might not want to hard code this like this. So see, this is a date criteria, but you might want to just have the cell being just the date. So if you simply just change this to the date. See, now we're basically just selecting where the date is exactly 2/13/2017. But what we wanted was everything that's greater or equal to that date. And this is B16 reference, which is this one. Now what I have to do, I have to build that string that says greater than or equal to that date. So I'm going to go here in my formula and start with the code and say greater than or equal to end the code and then use the enzyme. And the end sign is going to join the contents of this B16 cell, which is this in that formula. So this will be greater or equal to the state. I hit enter, that should give me my total for New Balance after or on the state and greater than 30. Now I can use the same technique for this. Instead of saying greater than 30, if I want to have that greater sign hard coded here in the formula and this numbers just says 30, let's say, then I'll go here. See here, say my quotes with a greater than sign and an S16, which is the cell, which should get me this. So I'm linked to those cells and we can simply change the value to, let's say, 50 or 20 or 0 or I don't know, 300 at some point is just not going to give us anything because nothing is going to match. But now it's linked to these cells are left. So you have all of these different options to do this. Now some common thing you might want to do is just sum up numbers between a particular range. So it's really the same thing. So if we have like a start date and an end date, then we'll type our dates. Let's say we only want to sum up everything between 2/13/2017. Right, so we want this range, let's change one of these to 2/16. So let's say we're just trying to get the total between this dates. So now I don't need that anymore. So I'll go here and do my SUMIFS. So again I'm going to just start over. So it's just cleaner. If we start with our sum range, if we want to sum up sales with select sales, comma, then we have criteria range. We're going to check the date. So it's going to be the column of dates. Now the first criteria, I want to make sure it's on or after 2/13/2017. So I'm going to do greater than or equal to encodes, then do the enzyme and join it with this date on here. So that will just make sure that the date is on and after this date. Then come again. Now we have a second criteria range. So that's going to be again the date range for the second time. Only this time the criteria is going to be that it should be less than or equal to, and then the enzyme again, and then click on this ending date. Hit close, hit enter. Now we should just have the total of dates that are between these two dates. So we should start from here up to here, I guess. So if I select this range over here, if I look at the sum on the bottom right, see, that's the same number we're getting with our SUMIFS. And again, obviously you could do AVERAGEIFS or something like that. Now some hidden options that some people are not aware of is that we can use wildcards in this function. SUMIFS, AVERAGEIFS, any of these really. So if I do some range of these sales, comma, now let's say the criteria range is going to be location, comma, and in this location column, now if I was just trying to get a particular location, let's say I just want to get Boston. So I'll just do something like this. Right. So again, usually I wouldn't hardcore this, I would just point to cell obviously, so that would get my Boston, Massachusetts total. But what I could do, I could utilize some wildcards here. So let's say I want to get everything that has Kansas City in it. So the way I could do that, I could just do star and then type Kansas City. Oops. city, these are not case sensitive, by the way, and do not a star. Something like this, hit enter, that will give me the total for everything that contains Kansas City in it. And stars are wildcards. They mean 0 or more characters. So basically we're saying there could be more characters on the left and on the right of this text that I'm providing. So I could do things like that. You could also use multiple wildcards if necessary. So I could do something like N and then star and then TY and then another star, and that basically means anything that has these two letters in this particular order, and then there could be some other characters here and then TY follows that, and then we are saying there could be more characters on the right. Now you could also do things where you check if a particular text starts with certain characters or if it ends with certain characters. So if I did something like this, this should get me everything that starts with this piece of string that I'm providing. So that should give me like Boston in there because that starts with BOS. Now let's say I want to get everything that ends with MO. So if I wanted to do that, I would do star MO and no star in the end that would be ending with MO. So if I do this, that would give me the total for those. Now one of the wildcards is the star and the second wildcard is question mark. So star means 0 or more characters and question mark means exactly one character. So for example, if I did something like L and then question mark and then S and then star, what I'm saying is that what I'm looking for is that it should start with an L and then there is going to be one character after that. We don't know what that character is, but definitely one character and then character S follows it and then star means get me whatever after that. Now I could do another star here, which would mean that that L doesn't have to be the first character. It's just something going forward. Now if I remove that star, see, this should match Los Angeles, but it should also match this one because the second character in this case is A, in this case is O, but the third character is S for both. So if I enter, I'm getting 660, which should be this added with this, so we won't say S numbers, which is these two, that's that number right there. Now I don't know if we have something that has that in the middle, probably not, so if we do that it's still the same thing. So that's your wildcards. I'm going to try to use this on a different column so it makes a little more sense. So let's try to do zip codes. Let's say I want to just get everything that starts with a 4 and the third digit in the zip code is 5. So if we look through this column, we can see like this one has 4 and third digit is 5, and this one has a 4 and the third digit is 5 as well. So if I wanted to do that, if I go back here and do my criteria, range is going to be the column of zip codes, and then the actual criteria, what I want to say 4 and then question mark, which means there's going to be a second character. And then 5 and then more characters to follow. So first character is 4, then one character, then 5 is the third character, and then more characters to follow. Now that's what I want to do, and if I had enter right now, say I'm getting a 0. So the reason I'm getting a 0 right now is because when I do this pattern matching, it expects the column in which you're checking to be text. But my zip codes here are numbers and it's not able to work through that. Now if I just select these and simply just switch that format to plain text, it will actually start working. So now see, I'm getting the number, so basically that should be this, which is the 600 number added with this, which is this other 600 number, which is over 1200. So that makes sense. Now this is not the same as doing this right, so if I did a star, see, I'm getting a different number because with star this really means 0 or more characters. It could be no characters at all, or it could be bunch of characters after 4, which means it would match like this 4A5 because 4 and there is a 5 after that. But it should also match like this 4 and there is a 5 in the end as well, and because the star could also mean nothing, that's also a match, so that gets in the mix of our matched results. So this is where you start using question marks to filter those out. Now again, similar to anything else, so you probably want this pattern to be someplace in a cell, and you can simply just point to that cell, and that should still return the same results. Now if you don't want to convert this column of numbers to text, which I did by doing this switching to plain text, now you can do some array functions over this data to make sure that it becomes text. So what I can do, I can wrap this range in array formula. And then just simply do the end sign, which is basically text plus sign, and add an empty text which is double codes, and that will create a new range which will basically be text instead of numbers, which should now work without having to convert that code. So we can call them to text specifically, and we can see we're getting the same results here. So again, similar to what I did before, I can just go here and do AVERAGEIFS instead. And so you can change the function name and it works the same for SUMIFS and AVERAGEIFS. So now let's get to COUNTIFS. So when we get to count, it's largely the same, so it's still going to be able to do all this pattern matching and all this different conditions, so it's just going to be counting. So when you do COUNTIFS, there is no sum range, that's really the only difference. So COUNTIFS doesn't have a sum range, so there's no like sales column to select, you just start with the criteria. So if we wanted to know how many zip codes match the particular pattern, we could just take this range of zip codes, comma, and then point to our criteria, which is here on the left, close parentheses, hit enter, and again this is now number. So let's switch to text, and this should probably not be dollar formatting anymore because it's just number of times that happens. So count, it will count how many we have that match the pattern, and that pattern doesn't have to be pattern, we can do any of the other conditions we did before. So really if you think about it, SUMIFS is the same function as COUNTIFS is the same function. So if I go back to this one, which used to be my AVERAGEIFS, and I was getting the pattern match or this, I could convert this to COUNTIFS. So if I just take this average and switch it to count, the only thing I have to do is just remove this first range, which is average range or some range, whatever that is, and that's my COUNTIFS function. Often you might have something like a dashboard, so I'm going to create like a new tab, call it dashboard. And then you might want to just have your totals from a different tab, which would be like a data set tab like this, and you might want to get your total sales by region or by brand or something like that. Let's say I want to get my total sales by brand. So first what I want to do on my dashboard tab, I want to get a clean list of my brands, so I can do that by simply using, let's just give this call of a name brand, and I'm going to use unique function to be able to do that. So I need to highlight the range of brands, so I'll go to transactions, I'm going to simply select something like this starting from the first one on top, not including the label, and then I'm going to go here and delete the reference for row 4 because I want to take it all the way down, including the future blank sales that are going below. If you just want to have specific range, that's fine, you can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and press F4 to lock that range. I'm going to close parentheses, hit enter, and that should give me a clean nice list of those brands. So now I want to get the total, so I'll call this sales. Let's say I want total sales for each one of this, so I start with my equals SUMIFS. Now I want some range, so I'm going to go under transactions, select this view, and remove the last reference for the row. Again F4 to lock it because I'm going to drag this formula down and I don't want my range to move down as I'm dragging the formula down, comma, then I need criteria range, so I'm going to check for different brands, so that means the brand column. Again remove the range. I want a reference for the N row and F4 to lock that, comma, and in this range of brands we need to check if it's that particular brand in the same row. So I'm going to go to dashboard and I need to make sure that this brand, which is New Balance, perfect, so I'm linking to that and closing this. I hit enter, that should give me the total for New Balance. Now I can simply just go to this corner and double click, or just simply just drag it down the regular way, and since we have the blank as one of the unique options, it's dragging down one more, which is fine, we can keep it, but I'm going to delete that, that's okay. So this gives me my totals for each one of those brands. Now let's say I want to also take this and I want to be able to get my total sales by brand and then broken down by region. So what I need to do, I need to get the list of regions going this way, so I'm going to go here and do unique function again because I want to get a unique list of my regions. So I'm going to go back to transactions, select this region and remove the ending row at 4 to close that, close parentheses, hit enter. That should give me a clean list of the options of my regions. The only problem is I wanted that to go this way, not this way, so I'm going to make that happen by going back. I'm putting this inside of a function called transpose, so transpose will basically just take a column and make it a row, or take a row and make it a column. So if I do transpose, see, now it's going to go this way. Now I need the total for New Balance Midwestern region here, so in order for me to do this I'm going to use my SUMIFS function and some range. Again I'm going to go to transactions, it's going to be sales, so I'm going to remove the reference to the ending row at 4 to lock it, comma. Now I need criteria range, so again I have to make sure I check inside of brands what brand it is, so that I'm going to move it to the end of the row. That would be this brand range, so it's kind of tricky to select. I'm going to just click here, go to the right with my arrow keys and shift down to select that little range, remove the end row reference and at 4 to lock that, comma. Now inside of that range of brands I want to make sure that it's that brand, which was, I believe, New Balance, so I go back to dashboard, click on New Balance. That's the brand, comma. Now we need the second criteria range, which is going to be the range of all of these different regions, and I can do that by going under regions list here. I'm going to select this range. Oops, went too far there, remove the end row reference, lock with a 4, comma, and then finally what region do I want here, so I'm going to go back to my dashboard and click on this region cell on top, which is where my Midwestern is. In this dashboard on top is kind of blocking it, but that's the correct cell. I'm going to close my parentheses, hit enter, so that would be the right. So now what I need, let's make this currency. I need to be able to drag this down and drag this right and make that work, but it's not going to, because if we drag this Formula 1 down it's going to refer to Nike, but it's going to move down and it's going to start checking in the range of regions if it's 69,000, but it should be checking if it's Midwestern instead. We need to do some mixed cell reference locking to make sure this works, so we go back to our first formula and fix that. So an easy way to think about is I go a 2 is New Balance. Now look at all different brands, all of them are located in column A, so I go and put a $sign in front of column A. The same way if I look at this C1, which is Midwestern, that's one of my regions, and all of my regions are going to be in the same way. I'm going to look at it in row 1, so therefore I'm going to add a $sign for row 1, and we need to make sure all of our ranges here are locked, which they already are. So if I hit enter now, simply just drag this right and drag it down, I should get the total for each region and each brand, and that gives me this table. Now if my intention was to do the average for all of this, instead of doing SUMIFS we would have done AVERAGEIFS, and everything else is exactly the same. So if I just take that and drag it, that would be the same thing all over again, that's the average. And finally if I wanted to get the count instead of AVERAGEIFS, that would be COUNTIFS, and we would remove the average. So the first range, that's the sum range, which is that right before that comma, and then I can just simply drag this right and drag it down, and since this are total number of sales, we should be using a different format for that. So that says there are 252 sales in this region for this brand, and that's what we get with SUMIFS, COUNTIFS, AVERAGEIFS, and I think that should pretty much cover all you need to know about this functions. If you have any questions, leave it in comments. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.